I think the reason that I'm so attracted to film is because I love all of the arts. And film is the only medium I know of that has every single one of them represented. I mean, it has music, it has costume design, it has acting, it has photography, it has, you know, everything under the sun it takes to make a movie. So it's kind of like a salad bar of the arts, and you get to have a little of everything. The very first drawings I did at the age of 3, and they weren't great drawings, they were just, you know, circle for a head, dots for eyes, that sort of thing, line for a mouth. What was unusual about them is that they were sequential. They were meant to be viewed in order, and there was more than one of them. And I would tell the story as I showed the pictures. And so I think from the very beginning I was trying to do movies. I just didn't have any way that I could do, you know. And then later when I actually started using film, you know, I guess that sort of language was comfortable for me. I made films when I was a kid, so you kind of, even though your grasp of technique or whatever you want to call it isn't very much at that age, just the act of making a film forces you to learn things. You know, I started to learn about how you can fool the eye when I made a little film when I was a kid, because one of us had to be behind the camera and 2 of us were on screen. I had to do a cut where suddenly someone was gone. And I realized that if you cut on action, your eye will go toward the action. And so I made a cut and I showed it to my parents and I said, "Is there anything wrong here?" And they said, no, it seems to, you know, work. And I said, "No, come on, check, there might be something weird." And they went, no, what's wrong? You know, and I said, "There's a person missing." And I said, "There's only 3 of us and one of us is missing. And you didn't notice that?" And they went, "No." And it was because of when I chose to edit. And it was on motion, and because the motion followed through the cut, your eye went to the motion. And that's the kind of stuff that, there's a lot of those sort of rules. They're not necessarily logical rules, they're film logic rules. And that was like an epiphany of what you can do with editing. Brad Bird, the writer, is a lot more irritable. He thinks that probably he's a sham. The director says the writer's always late, you know. They don't really get along as well as you'd think they would. Yeah. Every story is different. And sometimes you're starting with something that's, you know, known in some form, like The Iron Giant is a book, as everyone in this country knows. But what I got out of it, and what the story was magical to me. There was something really wonderful about it. But I always felt a little bit like the story halfway through the book becomes a contest between the Iron Giant and a giant space bat the size of Australia, going back, and they sort of have a competition where they fly into the sun and all this stuff. And that's wonderful and magical, and I wouldn't change a word of it. But I thought, for a movie, I feel like the movie is between the boy and the giant. And once I said, okay, that's what I want to focus on, then I said, what is the giant's deal? I didn't want him to come straight from the water like he does in the book. I wanted that to be from outer space, so he can go from outer space to water, but he can't just come from water, because then there are questions: why doesn't he rust? Is there a civilization of giants in the water? And yet, poetically in the book, it's great. So then I just started saying, what's his deal? And that's when the thing about what if a gun had a soul and didn't want to be a gun. Now, that's a pretty different take than the book, but the essential relationship between the boy and the giant, I think, is the same. So there are things like that occur to you along the way, and they're never the same thing twice. There's another film I want to do that started out with me mishearing a song. and it was Planet Claire from the B-52s. And I was listening to it, and it went dun 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 dun, and I thought, oh, this is Peter Gunn. And then right away it went, and I went, not Peter Gunn, what is it? It's Ray Gunn. And then I went, Ray Gunn, that's cool. What would that be? Well, he's a guy, just like Peter Gunn. His name is Raymond Gunn. And, you know, and it went from there. So sometimes it starts at the end and you write into it. Sometimes it starts with an opening and you come out of it. It's never the same way twice. The trick, I think, with any good sequel is how do you connect with what everybody knows and likes, but do so in a way where you can't predict what's going to happen next. You kind of have to honor the universe of the first film and the characters without simply repeating the story so everyone knows where it's going to go. And so I think getting the story right is always the most difficult thing. I had been trying to make films for a long time, get my opportunity to direct. And I was working on The Simpsons, and you know, I was able to keep a roof over my head. I had a lot of confidence in the show, which wasn't shared by a lot of the people who were, you know, creating it. They all thought that this will never work, that we'll do 13 episodes and then we'll be done, and because there wasn't anything on TV like it. But I always loved Matt Groening's work, and I loved James Brooks's work. And I became a huge fan of Sam Simon, and those three really were the principal people in starting it. It was a wonderful thing, I think, because I worked on the first 8 seasons or so. That was, I think, first 8 seasons. Every week they would do a read-through of the script, and it was the first time they'd hear the script performed. And everyone, all of the cast would be seated at a table and we'd be seated with them, and you could laugh because it wasn't being recorded. So those were wonderful things. I think they probably added years to my life because it was just, you're just laughing your ass off. And with live performance, and you're free to laugh, which you can't do when they record. So that was a real treat. I think I went to, you know, something like 160 of those, and they were fantastic, yeah. And what was really cool about it is that because of the choices actors made in how they interpreted the lines, that would change the course of a character. Like the first time that that Harry Shearer did Ned Flanders, the line in the script was something like, "Howdy, Simpson." And when it came time to say the line, Harry said, "Howdly doodly, Simpson." And suddenly the writers are going, "Ah, doodly 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 doodly." You know, that became his thing. And I saw that happen with character after character after character. You know, it would say Jailbird or something in the script. He wouldn't even have a name. It would say Jailbird. And the intention is there's one joke there, just a joke. And the guy'd go, "Yeah." And suddenly it became like this thing, and he got a name, Snake, and you know, he ended up being in 1 million episodes. And that happened consistently. So it was a delight. I think anyone that really is into it has, you know, 50, and there are probably 100 more. But certainly Spielberg had a big influence on me, David Lean, Hitchcock, you know, Buster Keaton. I mean, it goes way back. Harold Lloyd is underrated. You know, obviously Chaplin, Disney, goes on and on. Kurosawa, you know, Lucas, Coppola, you know, the Coen Brothers. If they make anything, if they do a film about, you know, pudding, I'll go see that on opening day. I mean, no, seriously, you could just keep rolling. Pretty soon everyone would get tired and just kind of leave the cameras on, and I'd just still be talking, you know. So yeah, there's 1 million filmmakers that I love.